On a brutal snowy night, a black man laid off, hungry and exhausted, found a luxury car stranded by the roadside. He carried a little girl, supported her grandmother, and brought them home, caring for them with quiet compassion. He didn't know that this simple act would bring the very man who once ruined his life to his door on his knees asking for forgiveness. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thought. A flurry of wind howled wild and primal, tearing through the tall pines along Highway 47, whipping icy sheets of snow across cracked asphalt. Malik Brown hunched deeper into his worn coat, trying to find some warmth on the threadbare bus seat. This was the last bus of the day, the last ride to a job that was no longer his. He was used to long commutes, transferring buses daily just to get to the garage, to crawl under broken transmissions, fixing what others had given up on. But today, that chapter was closed. A meager severance check, barely enough to cover the upcoming bills, lay crumpled in his pocket. New ownership, the manager's brisk voice echoed over the phone, hollow and detached. They're downsizing, especially the old guard. I'm really sorry, Malik. Malik knew what downsizing meant. It was a polite way to sweep away men like him, men who'd poured their lives into a place that now deemed them obsolete. Whispers had spread about the new company, a massive conglomerate swallowing smaller businesses. The man at the helm was rumored to be cold, driven only by profit. He was no stranger to this type. He was used to being underestimated, pushed aside because of his skin color, because of prejudices that labeled him lacking flexibility and adaptability to new technologies, due to an inherent attachment to old methods. A bitter taste rose in Malik's throat, thick with resentment. That bitterness deepened as he recalled a painful past, a wound that never truly healed. His wife, Sarah, had been gravely ill. He'd rushed, submitting an urgent medical aid request to the company where he'd spent his youth. At that time, the company had just changed hands a few months prior. New policies were being implemented, and everything was scrutinized more rigorously, in a mechanical, cold way. The request was flat out denied, citing failure to meet policy criteria. This case is not a priority, a cold voice from HR had told him over the phone, despite his pleas, his explanations of Sarah's urgent condition. Not long after that decision, he lost her. His wife's death, in part, was due to the callous, inflexible nature of a system, a policy Malik believed had pushed his wife to her end. That heartache, still fresh, ached whenever he thought of it. His stomach growled, a hollow ache that had plagued him all day. The few crumpled dollars in his wallet wouldn't even buy a decent meal. He closed his eyes, picturing a couple of sprouted potatoes and a can of beans left in the cupboard. That would be his dinner, a meager meal to ward off the cold creeping into his bones. He looked out the bus window. The storm had arrived with sudden fury, even for a Montana winter. The thick snowflakes now fell in solid white sheets, blanketing everything. The final bus shuddered to a halt, and Malik stepped out. The blizzard was now a full-blown maelstrom, a menacing, furious beast. The wind didn't just whistle, it roared like a wild animal, tearing icy snow into his face, swallowing almost all visibility. He tugged his old worn backpack higher on his shoulder, trudging down the deserted road, each step a struggle against an invisible current. He just needed to get home, quickly make dinner, and forget this terrible day. The road ahead was a blank slate, tire tracks disappearing almost instantly beneath the newly accumulated snow. Then, out of the corner of his eye, a shape, a faint orange glow, flickering by the roadside. Emergency lights. Malik's senses immediately sharpened. He cautiously approached. A black Range Rover lay tilted in a snowdrift, its rear wheels half buried, its engine silent as death. As he got closer, a knot tightened in his stomach. He saw no movement inside the vehicle. Malik walked over, the cold slapping his face like a physical blow. Snow flew across, stinging his cheeks. He went around to the driver's side and saw the car door ajar. Amidst the raging blizzard, an elderly woman, frail and trembling, stumbled desperately, trying to find help in the stark white night. Her mobile phone, her only link, had fallen and shattered, dead. She was utterly helpless. Meanwhile, a little girl lay motionless in the cold back seat, her face pale, her lips blue from the bitter cold. Her unconsciousness indicated her critical condition. Between the biting cold and the howling blizzard swallowing everything, the grandmother and granddaughter had no shelter, no means of communication, and were slowly succumbing, facing death from hypothermia. The scene revealed the fragility of life amidst unforgiving nature. "Hey ma'am," Malik yelled, but the storm swallowed his voice. He ran to her, his heavy boots crunching through layers of snow. The old woman collapsed into the snow. Malik quickly helped her up. My granddaughter is in the car," the old woman rasped, her voice hoarse, her finger trembling towards the Range Rover. She's frozen, not moving anymore." Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. "We were on our way back to the city from the ski resort. When the blizzard hit too fast, the car just broke down in the middle of the road," she explained quickly, her face pale from cold and fear. Malik immediately returned to the car. Through the fogged-up window, he saw a small girl lying motionless in the back seat, her face pale, her lips blue. She was unconscious, without a moment's hesitation, despite his own exhaustion, the gnawing hunger, and all the prejudices he'd faced. A strong surge of compassion welled up inside him. He flung open the car door, scooped the little girl up, holding her close to transfer some of his own body heat. He turned back to the old woman, helping her up. "Let's go, ma'am," Malik said firmly. He took off his only woolen scarf, an old faded one, but still warm with his body heat, and carefully wrapped it around her neck. "Here, put this on to stay warm." Malik carried the little girl on his back, a soft, ice-cold bundle, while his other arm supported the old woman, who stumbled alongside him. Each of his steps sank deep into the thick snow, the weight of 2 lives pressing down on his tired shoulders. The blizzard lashed at his face, chilling him to the bone, but he dared not stop. His breath plumed out in white clouds, each heartbeat a reminder of the fragile lives he was trying to preserve. "Are you all right, son?" the old woman whispered, her voice barely audible amidst the storm. "I'm fine, just hold on tight to me," Malik replied, his voice hoarse from cold and exhaustion. His legs felt like lead, every muscle tearing. Snow seeped into his collar, soaking him. His only scarf was now around the old woman's neck, leaving him exposed to the biting cold. But he had no regrets. These people's lives were in his hands. The storm still roared, but Malik kept his eyes fixed forward, towards his small home, his only anchor in the freezing night. Finally, after what seemed like an endless trek, he reached the door. He struggled to push open the old wooden door, kicking it shut behind them. The place was humble, well used, its walls patched with old newspapers, the floorboards creaking at the corners, the scent of pine smoke and old coffee lingering in the air. But now, it was a safe haven. Malik gently laid the little girl on the sofa near the wood-burning stove, where he'd managed to get a faint fire going before stepping out. The old woman, trembling, followed him in, her eyes fixed on her granddaughter. Inside, it was only slightly warmer, but it was dry and safe. Malik knelt beside the little girl, taking off her snow-soaked boots. He went into his small bedroom, rummaging through an old trunk under his bed. He pulled out a pair of thick soft woolen socks, carefully laundered, and a small thin child's sweater. These were items his wife, Sarah, had kept for their future children, before an unexpected illness took her. The pain was still there, but he pushed it aside. He carefully brought them out and changed the little girl. Then he went back to the kitchen, found his thermos, and poured some warm chamomile tea with honey into a chipped mug. He gently lifted the little girl's head, bringing the rim of the mug to her lips. Although she couldn't drink much, he patiently dripped it in carefully. The old woman had sat down beside her granddaughter, trembling as she clasped the little girl's cold hand. Her gray hair was now disheveled, damp with melted snow, and her eyes were still wide with panic, yet her gaze towards her granddaughter was filled with worry and helplessness. "Thank you, oh God, thank you," she rasped. "My granddaughter," Malik reassured her, gently placing a hand on the little girl's forehead. "Don't worry, ma'am, she's recovering. Are you hurt anywhere?" She shook her head, her eyes still watery. "No, just cold, and terrified. I was so helpless." 2 worlds collided under one roof, the frost on the window panes slowly melting as warmth began to spread. Malik leaned back, rubbing his hands. He was still cold, still unsure what he had just invited into his life. But as he looked at the little girl and the woman gradually settling down, a quiet sense of peace settled in his heart, partially dispelling the sorrow of losing his job and the gnawing hunger. They would make it through the night together. The wind had died down by the time the fireplace glowed red, casting shadows on the walls like a beating heart. The elderly woman now sat upright on the sofa, her complexion slowly returning, her hands clutching a cup of tea, as if it were the only thing grounding her to the present. She was still cold but no longer in danger. Malik had seen enough in his life to know when the worst had passed. A flush of color had returned to her cheeks, and the way she held her shoulders now, no longer slumped but tense. She was recovering. Malik looked at Ellie, who stirred, her eyelids fluttering. The little girl slowly opened her eyes, blinking her long lashes, looking at Malik with a gaze that was a mixture of confusion and curiosity. She gently moved her limbs, as if checking if she was okay. When Malik turned back, she gave a faint but genuine smile. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her voice much stronger now, though still a little hoarse. "You haven't even asked who I am." The old woman said, her voice still a little shaky but clearer now. Malik didn't flinch. He slowly leaned back, rubbing the back of his neck. "Doesn't seem to matter, and you didn't hesitate," she added, her eyes narrowing, not with suspicion, but curiosity. "You saw my granddaughter and me out there unconscious in a blizzard, and you just stepped in. You both needed help," he said simply, as if that explained everything, and to him it did. The woman looked at him for a long moment. His broad shoulders, the grease under his fingernails, his calloused hands that had wrapped blankets around her granddaughter, given her tea, and never asked for anything in return. His face was weathered, not old but tired in a way she recognized, a man who had carried too much for too long. She looked at the little girl dozing in her arms, wearing the small sweater and warm socks that weren't Malik's. Malik got up and went to the kitchen. He spooned hot soup from a dented pot into a bowl and returned to place it gently in front of the elderly woman. "It's nothing fancy," he mumbled. "Just potato and canned bean soup, whatever I had. But it'll warm you up." The woman looked at it. She spooned the soup into her bowl, tasted it, and closed her eyes. It was better than she expected, carrying a genuine warmth that fancy meals couldn't provide. Malik dozed off in his chair, trying to stay awake. A little while later, the old woman gently nudged him. "Mr. Malik, may I use your landline? I need to let my son know we're safe and staying here." Malik nodded, handing her the old landline phone. The old woman dialed, her voice filled with relief, as she spoke to her son. "Arthur, it's Mom. Ellie and I are safe. The blizzard was too bad, the car broke down, but luckily a kind man rescued us and gave us shelter for the night. His name is Malik Brown." Malik vaguely heard his name and the name Arthur being mentioned. He wasn't sure, but there was something in the old woman's voice and her son's name that gave him a strange sense of familiarity, a faint unease, as if he'd heard it somewhere before in an unpleasant context. He didn't dwell on it too much. The important thing now was their safety. The old woman hung up, her face much brighter. "My son said he'll come pick us up as soon as the storm clears and the roads are open." While waiting, Ellie, now fully awake, stirred on the sofa. She looked around the small house with curious eyes. When her gaze met Malik's, she gave a faint smile. "Uncle Malik," Ellie chirped, her voice still a little weak, "do you know how to fix toys?" She held out an old toy truck, its wheel crooked. Malik smiled, taking the truck. He gently took out his small tool kit, carefully disassembled the wheel, and used a special adhesive to put it back together. Ellie sat close by, intently watching Malik's every move, her eyes wide with admiration. "You're so good," she cheered when the truck was fixed. "You're even better than my dad." Malik just chuckled softly, patting her head. The storm had broken by the third day's dawn, leaving the world enveloped in a heavy silence that only falling snow could create. The roads were still buried, the world still frigid, but there was something gentler in the light that streamed across the floor. Malik had woken early, deciding to check on the Range Rover. His boots crunched on the snow as he trudged back to the vehicle, carrying a battery charger and a basic toolkit. He quickly charged the battery and checked the main components, ensuring the car would start once the roads were cleared. Inside the house, the elderly woman was ready to go. Ellie, now fully recovered, stood by her side. When Malik returned, his boots left melting snow prints on the floor. The elderly woman stood up to meet him. He looked at her for a moment, then held out a set of keys. "It should be fine now. Batteries charged. It'll start. You didn't have to fix it," she said softly. "My son's coming to pick us up. You could have left it." Malik shrugged, no reason to leave it broken. He turned back to the fireplace, redonning his now warm scarf. The sound of a luxurious car slowly approached the small road, its tires crunching on the thick snow. The car stopped, and a tall, imposing man stepped out. It was Arthur Whitmore. His face was cold, self-assured, bearing the distinct look of a powerful CEO. Arthur walked in, his eyes sweeping across Malik's small, humble home, then settling on Malik with a fleeting look of assessment, tinged with a hint of irritation, a familiar gaze Malik had grown accustomed to from people like Arthur. Malik stood frozen. A blinding flash of recognition shot through his mind. There was no mistaking it. This was Arthur Whitmore, the man who had acquired his old company, the man who had made the decision to downsize, taking away his job. And then, a sharp pang, the memory of Sarah's denied medical aid request suddenly flooded back. It was Arthur who stood behind that callous system, the system that had indirectly claimed his wife's life. Arthur's face became clearer in Malik's mind, matching the images he'd seen on business news, in reports about new ownership. A bitter, choking realization rose within Malik. Arthur strode forward, his eyes sweeping over Malik's small house, then resting on his mother and daughter. "Mom, Ellie," Arthur exclaimed, his voice filled with relief. He hugged his mother tightly, then turned to his granddaughter. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Dad," the little girl chirped. "Uncle Malik saved me and Grandma." Arthur looked up at Malik. He frowned, trying to search his memory, then suddenly recognized the face from hundreds of HR files marked staff reduction. The moment he realized his family's savior was the very man he had coldly dismissed, a sense of shock and bewilderment, mixed with embarrassment, began to creep into Arthur. He knew he had fired him, had considered him obsolete, and now he was the one who had saved his family. Malik looked at Arthur, his gaze unreadable, without a trace of resentment, as if he had never been fired by him or indirectly suffered due to his policies. He just stood there, calm and silent. Arthur took a deep breath. He pulled out his wallet, taking out a thick wad of cash. "Here's a little to thank you for your kindness and help. This is what I can do right now." He held out the money to Malik, his eyes still holding a hint of superiority, as if money could solve everything. He hadn't truly grasped the significance of the act. Malik looked at the cash, then gently pushed Arthur's hand away. "No need, sir. I didn't save them for money." His voice was steady, unwavering. Arthur was stunned. He was used to everything being purchasable with money, but in the face of this unconditional kindness, money became meaningless. He stared at Malik, his usual arrogance slowly dissolving, leaving him with a sense of bewilderment and an indescribable feeling of humility. For the first time, Arthur felt small before a man he had once disdained. Arthur, his face still bewildered, tried to compose himself. "Malik, I'm truly grateful to you. I don't know what to say." He turned to his mother and daughter, as if seeking confirmation of what was happening. Malik merely gave a slight nod, remaining silent. He said nothing about being fired, about Arthur's past prejudices, or about Sarah. His composure only made Arthur more uncomfortable, but at the same time, it planted a seed of questioning in his mind. Finally, Arthur had to accept Malik's refusal. He helped his mother and daughter into the car, but before driving away, he paused beside Malik. "Malik, I won't forget this. I will find a way to repay you properly," he said, his voice firm, his eyes resolute, though at this point he was still thinking only of a repayment that was material or a simple job opportunity. Malik just nodded slightly, saying nothing more. The luxury car drove away, leaving Malik standing there alone in his small house amidst the vast white snow. Back in his luxurious mansion, Arthur was still reeling. The image of Malik, The black man with resolute eyes and his refusal of money haunted his mind. He couldn't shake off Malik's calm gaze, devoid of any resentment, even though he had recognized him. A sense of embarrassment, even shame, crept into Arthur as he recalled his prejudices and his act of downsizing. For the next few days, Arthur's mind was constantly occupied. He had initially decided he would hire Malik for a good position in the new company, viewing it as a proper repayment to the man who had saved his mother and daughter. However, the true profound change came from the two most important women in Arthur's life, his mother and his daughter. One evening, after Ellie had gone to sleep, Arthur's mother sat beside him in the living room. She looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. "Have you ever wondered why Malik refused your money?" she asked softly. Arthur frowned, explaining that he thought he was a man of integrity, a special person. She shook her head. "Special, yes," she said, "but not just because of integrity. Son, he didn't hesitate for a second to save your mother and Ellie. He didn't ask who we were, didn't ask how we would repay him. He acted purely out of compassion."
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.